The Texas night erupted in a symphony of chaos on Highway 281, a desolate ribbon of asphalt slicing through the plains north of San Antonio. Major Vanessa Brooks clung to the wheel of her black Jeep Cherokee, her knuckles white as the vehicle shuddered under the brutal impact of a black sedan ramming her rear bumper. Tires screeched, a high-pitched wail against the pavement, as she fought to keep the Jeep from spinning into the ditch. Red and blue lights blazed in her rearview mirror, not just from the sedan, but from a patrol car roaring up behind her, its siren a banshee scream piercing the humid dark. Sweat beaded on her brow, her heart hammering like artillery fire, her years of combat training in Iraq and Afghanistan snapping into focus. This wasn't a traffic stop, it was an ambush, and she was the prey. 20 minutes earlier, the night had been deceptively calm, the sky a vast canopy of stars over the endless Texas flatlands. Vanessa, 42, a decorated U.S. Army major, was driving home from a veterans gala at Fort Hood, her crisp dress uniform folded neatly in a garment bag on the back seat, swapped for a charcoal blazer, white blouse, and jeans. Her dark eyes, honed by years of leading troops through war zones, flicked to the horizon until those flashing lights appeared behind her, unprovoked and relentless. She hadn't sped past the 65 miles per hour limit, hadn't swerved, hadn't given a single reason for this. But Officer Travis Maddox didn't need reasons, just power, and the color of her skin was excuse enough. Maddox stormed toward her window, a hulking figure at 6'3", his buzz-cut head glinting under his cap, his badge a smug crown in the moonlight. He'd done this dance 100 times. Lone driver, empty road, no witnesses. Just him and his unchecked authority. He wrapped her window with his flashlight, the beam stabbing into her face like a weapon. "License and registration," he barked, his gray eyes narrowing with a contempt she'd faced too often. A look that screamed she didn't belong here, not on his road, not in his world. Vanessa kept her movements slow, deliberate, handing over her driver's license with a steady hand. "What's the problem, officer?" she asked, her voice calm, but edged with the steel of a woman who'd stared down death and won. He barely glanced at the ID, his gaze roving over her hands, her blazer, the Jeep's interior like a predator sizing up its kill. "Step out of the vehicle, now," he ordered, stepping back, his hand resting on his holster with a casual menace that set her nerves on edge. Her jaw tightened, but she held her ground. "On what grounds?" "I don't need grounds," he snapped, his lips curling into a sneer. "Out, or I'll drag you out." Vanessa exhaled sharply, her mind racing like a tactical briefing under fire. She knew the drill: stay calm, don't give him an excuse. But this wasn't routine. Maddox's eyes gleamed with a hunger for control, a dark thrill that told her he'd already decided how this would end. She opened the door and stepped onto the gravel shoulder, her boots crunching with a quiet defiance, her posture straight as a blade despite the heat pressing down like a physical weight. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice low, steady, a warning he didn't heed. Maddox towered over her, his flashlight stabbing her face again, blinding her momentarily. "Funny, I don't see a badge," he sneered. "You're just another driver to me. Hands on the hood. Move." She complied, but not before slipping her phone from her pocket, her thumb discreetly tapping the record button. Maddox didn't notice. He was too busy tearing into her Jeep, ripping open the glove box with a savage yank, tossing her registration papers onto the seat, his hands clawing under the dash and seats like a man possessed. Papers fluttered to the floor, gas receipts, a folded map, a photo of her unit in Kabul, each item a violation as he trashed her space. "Where's your ID?" he snarled, slamming the passenger door shut with a bang that echoed in the still night. "My military ID's at Fort Hood," she said, watching him unravel, his movements jerky with frustration. "My license should be enough." He spun on her, his face flushed red with fury, veins bulging in his neck. "No ID, no proof, you're lying. Turn around, hands behind your back." Vanessa tilted her head, her voice cutting through the humid air like a blade. "You're arresting me? For what?" "For refusing a lawful order," he growled, pulling his cuffs from his belt, the metal glinting ominously in the patrol car's lights. "And I don't think you're who you say you are." The cuffs clicked around her wrists, cold and sharp, biting into her skin as he shoved her toward his patrol car with a force that made her stumble. She didn't resist, not yet, but her mind locked onto a lifeline. One call could end this. She just needed the chance. As he radioed in the arrest, static crackled through his comms, and Vanessa caught a fragment of a voice, garbled, but chilling. "She's the one. Take her down hard." Maddox's smirk widened, his eyes flicking to her with a predator's glee, and her blood ran cold. This wasn't random. He knew exactly who she was, and this was only the beginning. The San Antonio precinct buzzed with late-night tension, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the bullpen as Maddox marched Vanessa inside, his grip bruising her arm through her blazer. The air smelled of stale coffee and sweat, the hum of radios and clacking keyboards a restless undertone. Officers at their desks glanced up, some with curiosity, others with unease, whispers snaking through the room like venom as Maddox barked, "Book her. Failure to ID, resisting arrest." Vanessa stood silent, her cuffs glinting under the lights, her gaze fixed on a payphone in the corner, its chipped black plastic a beacon in the chaos. "I get a call," she said, her voice slicing through his bravado like a bayonet. Maddox scoffed, his grip tightening. "You'll get it when I say so, sweetheart." Desk Sergeant Ortiz, a wiry man with tired eyes and a graying mustache, intervened, his tone sharp as he slid the phone across the counter. "She gets a call, Maddox. Now." His glare at the officer was thinly veiled disgust, a crack in the precinct's usual solidarity. Vanessa dialed with steady hands despite the cuffs, the line ringing twice before a gruff voice answered, "Pentagon, General Hayes." She kept it brief, her words clipped and precise, a soldier reporting from the field. "Sir, it's Major Brooks. Detained, San Antonio PD, Officer Travis Maddox, racial profiling, unlawful arrest." Hayes's response was instant, a growl of authority. "Stay put. I'll bury this bastard." Minutes dragged like hours, the precinct's tension thickening as Maddox paced, his boots thudding against the linoleum, his smirk faltering with every glance at Vanessa's unflinching calm. Then the precinct phone rang, a shrill interruption that made Ortiz flinch. He answered, his face paling as he listened, then slammed the receiver down and bolted for the chief's office, his voice a low hiss. "It's the damn Pentagon." Maddox froze mid-step, oblivious still until Chief Ramirez, a stocky man with gray hair and a glare that could melt steel, burst from his office, his voice a thunderclap that silenced the room. "Maddox, my office now!" The bullpen went dead quiet, every eye on Vanessa as Ramirez turned to her, his tone softening with a rare deference. "Major Brooks, my deepest apologies. You're free to go. This ends here." Maddox's smirk vanished, his fists clenching until his knuckles whitened. "She's lying. She's got no proof." "Shut your damn mouth," Ramirez roared, his face inches from Maddox's. "Pentagon's on the line. Your career's ash, and you're lucky it's not worse." Vanessa walked out, the precinct doors swinging shut behind her, but Maddox's glare burned into her back, a promise of retribution she knew he'd try to keep. Dawn broke over Texas, the sun a blazing eye climbing above the horizon, casting long shadows across Highway 281 as Vanessa slid into her Jeep. Her wrists ached from the cuffs, red welts marking her skin, but she'd won. Maddox was suspended, an internal review looming like a guillotine. Yet victory tasted like dust, dry and fleeting. Men like him didn't fade quietly, and she knew it. She merged onto the highway, the Jeep's engine a steady hum, when a black sedan roared into view in her rearview mirror, tailing her too close. Its headlights glaring like a predator's eyes. Her instincts screamed danger, and she tightened her grip on the wheel, her pulse quickening. The sedan surged forward, its engine snarling as it rammed her bumper, forcing her onto the shoulder in a spray of gravel that rattled against the undercarriage. Vanessa slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop as Maddox leapt out, his uniform gone, replaced by a sweat-stained t-shirt and jeans, his face a twisted mask of rage under the morning light. "You think you've won?" he roared, slamming his fist against her hood with a metallic clang that echoed across the empty plains. "One call doesn't change shit." Vanessa stepped out, her stance calm but coiled, every muscle primed from years of combat drills. "Get in your car, Maddox," she said, her voice ice-cold, a warning he ignored. "You're done." He lunged, grabbing her arm, his fingers digging in like claws, his breath hot with venom. "Not how this ends." She twisted free, her training igniting, slamming his arm down with a bone-jarring crack, sweeping his legs from under him in one fluid motion. He crashed to the pavement, grunting as she pinned him, her knee pressing into his chest, her forearm locking his throat. "You don't know when to quit," she said, her voice a low growl as he thrashed beneath her, nails clawing at her skin, drawing thin lines of blood. Then the air exploded with chaos. A beat-up pickup screeched to a halt beside them, its tires spitting dust as two men in hoodies piled out, guns drawn, cheap 9mm glinting in the sunlight. "Finish her!" Maddox yelled, scrambling up, his eyes wild with desperation. Vanessa dove behind her Jeep, bullets pinging off the metal frame as she yanked a concealed Beretta from her ankle holster, her movements swift and precise. She fired back, 2 shots, 2 hits, center mass, dropping the gunmen like sacks of grain, their blood pooling on the asphalt in dark, spreading stains. Maddox froze, his bravado shattering as sirens wailed in the distance, patrol cars roaring into view. Officers leapt out, weapons trained, cuffing him mid-scream as he flailed, his voice hoarse with rage. "You'll pay for this, bitch!" he spat, but the fight was gone, his body slumping as they dragged him away. Back at the precinct, Chief Ramirez pulled Vanessa aside, his office a cluttered fortress of files and faded commendations, his face grim under the harsh fluorescent glow. "Maddox wasn't alone," he said, his voice low, weighted with the gravity of what he'd uncovered. "His brother's a clerk at the Pentagon, leaked your file last night after you left Fort Hood. That stop wasn't random. He knew your rank, your route, everything. Planned to kill you on that road, stage it as an accident, hit and run, drunk driver, whatever stuck. Those gunmen? His cousins, ex-cons he called in as backup." Vanessa's breath caught, her mind reeling as the pieces snapped into place. The comms crackle she'd overheard. "She's the one. Take her down hard." Wasn't static, it was an order. The sedan ramming her, the roadside attack, it wasn't blind rage, it was a calculated hit, orchestrated with Pentagon intel. Her call to Hayes hadn't just saved her life, it had blown open a conspiracy she'd never suspected. A web of corruption stretching from a Texas highway to the heart of military bureaucracy. "His brother's in custody," Ramirez added, rubbing his temples. "Feds are raiding the Pentagon now. Heads will roll." "You okay, Major?" She nodded, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "I've faced worse. Just didn't expect it here." Weeks later, the San Antonio courtroom crackled with electric tension, the air thick with the weight of justice as Maddox faced trial. The charges stacked up like a death knell. Assault, attempted murder, conspiracy, corruption. Each one a brick in the wall of his downfall. Evidence flooded the room. His brother's leaked Pentagon files, Vanessa's dashcam audio capturing his venomous threats, a decade of buried complaints, racial profiling, excessive force, intimidation, dragged into the light like skeletons from a shallow grave. Witnesses testified, officers who'd once shielded him now scrambling to save themselves, their voices trembling as they recounted his reign of terror. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and eyes like flint, delivered the verdict. 25 years, no parole, her gavel a thunderclap that echoed through the packed gallery. Maddox slumped in his chair, his defiance crumbling into dust, his brother and cousins indicted alongside him, their family empire of corruption collapsing under the weight of their own hubris. Vanessa took the stand, her voice unwavering, her gaze locked on Maddox, not with hate but with the quiet resolve of a soldier who'd faced worse enemies and walked away standing. Outside, the Texas sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of fire as reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing like gunfire. Vanessa slipped past them, driving back to Fort Hood through the plains, the highway stretching endless before her like a promise of peace. At her desk, she found a letter slipped under a stack of mission reports. A note from Keisha, a young black recruit she'd mentored, now in basic training. Major Brooks, it read in neat, determined handwriting. You showed me we can fight and win, no matter the odds. I'm here because of you. Tucked inside was a photo. Keisha in her army fatigues, beaming with pride, her dark eyes alight with the same fire Vanessa had carried through every battle. Vanessa's throat tightened, a rare tear slipping free as she traced the words with her finger. She set the letter beside a framed photo of her unit in Kabul. Soldiers of every color, united in the dust and chaos, their faces etched with the trust she'd earned. Maddox had lost everything. His badge, his freedom, his name now a cautionary tale whispered in precincts across Texas, a warning to those who'd wield power like a weapon. But for Vanessa, this was more than victory. It was a legacy, a torch passed to those who'd follow, forged in the fire of a dark road she'd turned into light. She leaned back in her chair, the hum of Fort Hood's activity a steady pulse outside her window, and let the weight of the night lift. The fight wasn't over. There'd always be another Maddox, another battle. But she'd be ready. For Keisha, for her unit, for herself, she'd keep standing. A soldier unbroken, a beacon unbowed.